Hello, Rama Rama Puppodu. Hope all are in good health, feeling great, having a wonderful life, and happy always. Now let's go to chapter 38 3. Illumination in the cave. Gopal Rao's vacation was now coming to a close. He proposed to take Ramdas with him to Amritsar. He engaged a special motor car for the journey to Rawalpindi, but Ramdas' attraction for the cave on the hill did not permit him to accompany him. God willed that he should live in the cave for some days. He disclosed this fact to Gopal Rao, who was greatly disappointed at the news, but had to submit to the inevitable. His deep concern for Ramdas induced him to leave word with Veer Bai Singh, the Sikh saint, to have a watchful interest in Ramdas. He left Srinagar with his wife, and the same evening Ramdas occupied the cave. The interior of the cave was spacious, although the entrance was narrow. Since the cave had been frequented by goats that grazed on the hill, the place inside was extremely dirty, with their droppings and urine. There was a small chenna tree at the mouth of the cave and a flat slab of stone at its base. Ramdas then proposed only one thin ochre-colored plain cashmere shawl presented by Gopal Rao and nothing else. The floor in the cave was of two levels. As you enter, you come to a lower ground, at the end of which is a raised platform reaching the hidden hollow wall of the cave. The ground and the pedestal were rugged, and sharp bits of gravel lay thickly scattered on them. Even during the day, semi-darkness prevailed in the cave. As the sun was about to set, Veer Bai Singh came hastening up the hill to where Ramdas was and said, "I have heard that you are going to stay in this cave. You may command me to supply you with whatever you want." "Ramdas wants nothing," was Ramdas' reply. "No, that will not do. I will arrange to provide you with food, blankets, and rugs," he exclaimed. "Ramdas wants to remain here for some days without food and comforts, so please don't trouble yourself," Ramdas put in. "I cannot agree with you there. You must permit me to feed and look after you. I will consider it as no small privilege. I will not allow you to starve. Tell me what you would have. Don't think that you can put me off so lightly," he said. In fact, Ramdas wished to live in that solitary spot for some days, undisturbed with the food and drink questions. But the saint was obdurate, and Ramdas had to yield and stipulate, "Well, Maharaj, you may provide him at midday with a small quantity of boiled rice mixed with milk. That is all." "That is not all," he answered quickly. "What about evening? I would have you take at least some fruit and milk." Ramdas became helpless in the hands of one who was determined to feed him. The saint left. When darkness set in, Ramdas entered the cave and took up his position on the raised ground, using a part of the thin shawl for spreading on the floor, and lay down flat on the rough gravel. At about 10 o'clock, a stout and fair-looking boy servant of the saint came, lantern in hand, carrying a mat of stout reeds and some blankets. Ramdas spread the mat at the place where he lay down, and having a blanket folded up for a pillow, he returned the surplus blankets and bade good night to the lad. The cave was pitch dark in the night. He stretched himself on the mat at full length and covered his body with his shawl. He did not feel much cold, as the cave was warm within. The whole night he was awake. After midnight he heard beside him rustling noise and squeaks as of rats, which did not in any way disturb him. The night passed and the day dawned. He went out and sat on the slab of stone at the foot of the chenna tree and drank in the picturesque scenes of the lake, mountains, and growth of the green foliage. At noon approached, he retired into the cave. Now an old Muslim paid him her visit. He expressed his surprise at seeing Ramdas dwelling in the cave and added, "Are you aware that there are two serpents in this cave?" Many goats that strayed into this cave have fallen victims to their poisonous fangs. You see a hole just a few inches from the place where you rest your head. It is their home. Did you not have any trouble from them? How long have you been in this place? Ramdas has been staying here since last evening. Ramdas replied, in the night, except that he heard the squeak of rats and a rustling noise caused by them. He had no other disturbance. Ah, he exclaimed, with eyes wide open and his bearded head shaking. They are the serpents, not rats, as you suppose. They produce a cry similar to that of rats. I did not visit the cave for a long time and was under the impression that the serpents might have left the place. Now I know they are still there. Be warned, leave this dreadful place at once. Somehow they spared you last night. You cannot be sure of the future. Ramdas has no fear. He stops in this cave under the protection of God and by his command, so he would continue to reside here. Ramdas replied. The old man nodded his head again with grave and doubtful looks. The talk turning into other channels, he spoke of a Muslim sadhu who was living in the cave for 30 years, and this was 20 years ago. Giving Ramdas a second warning, the kind-hearted old man left. The boy servant of Virbai Singh brought food and milk at midday and in the evening regularly. Sometimes Ramdas would be sitting on a lower peak than that of the temple, absorbed in a blissful abstraction, and would forget to go down to the cave at the meal time. But the faithful boy would quietly search the hill for Ramdas with the food basket in hand, and when he found Ramdas, feed him at the places wherever he sat. Virbai Singh, Janki Nath, Shambhunath and several Sikh friends would pay him visits during daytime and furnish him with pots for water. Also charcoal, gangdi, matches, etc. to keep a fire against cold. But Ramdas never used these materials. Shambhunath, whom Ramdas met at Panchatarani, desired to have him for a few days at his house. On his leaving the cave, Ramdas lived in the cave for 1 week, during which he never bathed, drank or used water. Water could be had only from the lake which was at the foot of the hill, fairly 3 furlongs down from the cave. He never descended the hill in those days. On the night of the 7th day he had a strange experience. It might be past midnight. The interior of the cave was as usual utterly dark. Suddenly a brilliant bluish light lit up the entire cave. He seemed to be absorbed in that light, which lasted only for a few seconds, and then it gradually disappeared, throwing the cave again into the depths of darkness. On the 8th day, early morning, that is, the day following the vision of light, he left the cave and presented himself at the kuti of Saint Virbai Singh, who welcomed him with open arms. That's all, folks. Let's see in the next chapter. Thank you. Bye bye. Rama Rama Pupodu.